I feel like my anxiety part became me. And me, like my soul, was lost. Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jessie. If you are new here, I do all kinds of motherhood vlogs, lifestyle videos, but I also talk about things like my debt and living with chronic illness sprinkled in there as well. So if you're interested in any of those topics, I post twice a week. Make sure you subscribe. I'd love to have you a part of the channel. Today, I'm actually going to do a follow-up video to a video I did a few months ago about my anxiety and just like where it's been at. Also, can we just talk about the fact that I'm full of drool marks because my daughter fell asleep on me today? Anyways, so I kind of want to do an update on my anxiety, give a little bit more background than I did in that video, as well as how I'm feeling having started anxiety medication. Now, I want to put this disclaimer out here, two disclaimers really. One, I'm not a medical professional by any means. Take what I'm saying as just my opinion and what has worked and hasn't worked for me. Two, I am coming at this as someone who was anti-anxiety medication. I had actually taken an antidepressant in college and I hated the way that it made me feel. I felt terrible, and I've been like anti-medication of any kind ever since. Getting on a medication was like a really big deal for me. A lot of you guys actually encouraging me to try it because you could tell that things were a little bit out of control. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about my anxiety, how it's been, how it's going, and then I'm also going to tell you a little bit about anxiety medication and if it's helped or if it hasn't. So let's jump into this video. Okay, I do have some notes here, so if you see me looking at my phone, I'm not being rude. I have pregnancy brain. Okay, I don't remember what I just ate 2 minutes ago. Actually, I didn't eat 2 minutes ago, but you know what I mean? I don't remember. If you're here and you don't want to go watch my other video, I kind of dealt with situational anxiety here and there throughout my life, but I wouldn't have ever considered myself an anxious person. I have people in my family, people in my husband's family who deal with anxiety, and it just like wasn't something that I thought that I dealt with, besides when it came to like things I was really afraid of, like flying on a plane, getting anxious at work, things like that. But it was never anything that I couldn't handle. There's a couple of things. So since the pandemic, my anxiety just kind of like took a mind of its own. I don't think it was caused by the pandemic. I think there were a couple of things and I was already kind of leading into that area. So we've talked about the fact that we have lived in mold in our previous apartment. What I haven't talked to you guys about is the fact that we have lived in suspected or known mold before, but we didn't realize that it was a big deal. So actually the first apartment that I lived in Chicago had like noticeable obvious mold. My laundry like leaked all the time and there would be like standing water. Didn't think anything of it. We had known mold in our house in Wheaton, and then we had suspected mold in our house in Raleigh. We don't know for sure if there was mold. Fairly certain though, based on what we know now. However, at the time we weren't thinking about it. It wasn't until we moved into this house in Hoffman Estates, not this house, the house we were in previously. I think my practitioner, honestly, I got a new practitioner, recommended like testing for mold, noticed that I had it in my system. A lot of my symptoms that I was complaining about before I got pregnant were connected to that. My husband got tested. He also had mold in his body. We found mold in the house. We did like professional mold inspection of the house. I'm bringing that up because mold is like one of the, not root causes, but like one of the symptoms of mold can be like intense anxiety. So there is a chance that like my anxiety was really ramped up because of how much I have been exposed to mold. There's also a chance that it wasn't, but I do think that's just an interesting piece to bring up. So in 2020, my anxiety had already started to go up throughout the years, but it had definitely gotten bad at that point. I was in a job that I hated. I was treated really poorly. My boss left, my coworkers left. I was left there with like this crazy CEO. I have a video on this too if you're interested, from like years ago, but I had to stay in this job. We were in a really bad like money position. If you followed either of my channels at that time, I had an older channel. I just feel like my anxiety started raging. Ben and I had some like not marital issues, but like relational issues that we were dealing with. He was dealing with a lot of health issues, money issues with his business, all that kind of stuff. I still feel like at the time it was manageable. I felt like it was manageable. We'll get to that. Now, like looking back, I'm like, was it manageable? I don't know, but it was better than it was in like the last year or two. So at the end of 2020, literally December of 2020, I quit my job. I really thought that was going to help with my anxiety. I was having like panic attacks multiple times a week about work, but my anxiety kind of just then grasped onto other things. So like it got better work-wise, but it got worse in other ways. We had some like big issues with money in 2021 where like I was making money from my business, but Ben wasn't really making any money from his business. And we had a lot of debt that we needed to like pay down or get out of. So Ben was doing like Uber Eats, trying to bring in extra money. So it was just stressful. And I ended up getting pregnant in August of 2021 and had a miscarriage. And that just kind of like blew up in my face. I went into like depression, anxiety, all this stuff. Then I got pregnant with Ivy in 2022 in April. Ben got a job. My business was doing really well, so the money thing started to cool down. But my anxiety during my pregnancy with Ivy was just outrageous. Like I was so anxious all the time. And postpartum, it was worse. It got to the point where I couldn't leave the house, was terrified at all times of the day that Ivy was going to die. I wasn't sleeping because either she was keeping me awake, or when she was asleep, I was terrified that she was going to die. So I was hyper focused on her. And I know that a lot of parents go through this, but mine was even like a step more. I was having intrusive thoughts. I was having full panic attacks. I was wanting to go to the hospital because I thought I was dying. There was all kinds of stuff going on. I don't think I realized how bad it was until I was out of it for a few months. But let me tell you, it was scary. Some of the thoughts that I had, not necessarily things that I would do, but things I was afraid of happening to me or to Ivy. So it just was outrageous. We decided to move back to Illinois, which just amped up my anxiety even more. I didn't want to move back to Illinois. I wanted to be closer to family, but I didn't want to leave Raleigh. Plus I was dealing with postpartum, plus I wasn't sleeping. And it just got to the point, actually before we left Raleigh, I was diagnosed with postpartum OCD and anxiety. But then when I came to Illinois, I was diagnosed again by a different doctor with postpartum anxiety because I had to switch doctors. If you guys watch my vlogs during this time, I couldn't leave the house. I could barely walk down the street with Ivy. If I had to bring her somewhere, it was just like I was so anxious all the time, to the point where I just like wasn't living my life. I wasn't talking to people. I wasn't interacting with people. Ben and I were at, you know, odds because I couldn't handle any type of stimulation. Like he would come down, and if he would even just annoy me just like a tiny bit, I would go through the roof. So I just like, my cup was always too full. So anything could make me spill over and like explode. My therapist offered me anxiety medication. I did not want to do anxiety medication. Ben also didn't want me to do anxiety medication, which kind of played into it as well. A couple of you kept recommending it as well. So it was like a seed planted, but I was just like, no, I don't want to do this. However, fast forward to like March, I don't remember what month it was. It was either March or April. I ended up going to the hospital because I swallowed a bone accidentally. Well, because it wasn't supposed to be in the food that I was eating, and I swallowed a bone and it got lodged here in my esophagus. Extremely painful. Not a great thing to happen to somebody who thinks she's going to die at all times of the day. So I was in a state of literal panic for like 24 hours. I was in the hospital waiting to get this thing taken out. I thought I was gonna die. They like were taking x-rays and were like looking at different parts of my body, and I thought they were gonna find something, and I was just like so freaked out. My health anxiety has been insane. The ER doctor kept asking me if he could give me anxiety medication. I was like, no, like stop asking. I don't want anxiety medication. And then finally, I was just like, I had been in such a state of panic for so long that I accepted a half dose of anxiety medication. And because it was given intravenously or IV, it kicked in right away. I told Ben it was the first time that I felt like I could hear myself in like years. I was still anxious, but I was able to be like, I'm not gonna die. Things are okay. But I could hear myself. Saw my doctor a few days after I was in the hospital. She wrote me a prescription for anxiety medication after I told her about this situation. She did fluoxetine, like a small dose, and then I went up to like the typical dose. I think it's like 20 milligrams or microgram or whatever. She started me on like 10, and then I moved up to 20. However, I sat on that prescription for like 3 weeks because I was too afraid to take it. I didn't want to put a medication in my body. I felt like I was failing. Here I am, someone who like meditates and does morning routines and does all the things you're supposed to do for your mental health, yet my mental health was worse than I had ever experienced in my entire life. But I had this like little birdie chirping in the back of my head that was like, remember how you felt in the hospital for that small amount of time, how I actually felt like I could hear myself again, because for so many years I didn't feel like I knew who I was. I didn't feel like I could be myself because the anxiety had become me. Talked with my therapist then after about 3 weeks of sitting on this prescription. She recommended, what is holding you back? If you don't like the way it makes you feel, you can stop taking it and then we can try something else. It was very much like, just try it, see what happens. You never know. If you don't like it, then you just go off of it. It's not gonna like harm anything. I started taking anxiety medication, I wanna say in April of this year, a small dose. Thankfully, I know this doesn't happen for everybody. The dosage and the type that I was put on helped right away. I didn't have to like bounce around and try different medications. We specifically did this one because we knew that I wanted to get pregnant at some point, and it is a pregnancy safe medication. I've been on that now for 6-7 months-ish, and I feel like an entirely different person. I feel like all of this work that I've done with like coaches and therapists and reading and writing and meditating and doing all the things that you're supposed to do to take care of your mental health, I did all of those things and I was good at all of those things, but because my anxiety was so all-encompassing, I could never move the needle. Whereas I feel like with the medication that I've been taking, it has cut the noise so much that I can feel myself again. I hope that you guys understand what I mean when I say that. Like when I can hear myself, like if you think of yourself as like multiple people, I go to called internal family systems therapy, where like different parts of your personality or whatever are like different parts internally. So you might have like a firefighter part and a manager part and a fear part and you know, all this kind of stuff. I feel like my anxiety part became me, and me, like my soul, was lost. And I feel like with taking the medication, I can hear me again. So I still get some anxiety, but it's nothing compared to what it used to. My intrusive thoughts have been, I would say like 90%, 95% most days cut out of my brain. I'm not having these like constant pictures of terrible things happening, or I can go outside with my daughter by myself. I've taken her to a park by myself. I've gone shopping with her by myself, which are all things that I couldn't do before. If I start not feeling well or I'm having symptoms, I'm not immediately thinking that I'm dying. In fact, even things that I'm like super terrified of, that I've always been terrified of, like flying on a plane, which is funny because there's one flying over right now. I actually think that I could do that soon, whereas in the last few years I've been like, there's absolutely no way like I would have a panic attack to the point of like dying if I did that. Whereas now I'm like, I could do that if I really wanted to or really needed to. Still something I'm going to be afraid of, but the fact that I can even be like, I could do that is crazy to me. I just feel like in general I have myself back, and I'm able to like actually become this person that I am now, like a mother, like multifaceted person and who I am, versus just being so encompassed by anxiety that I can't see anything else. I'm a better wife, I'm a better mom, I'm a better me, I'm a better friend. I'm not so easily triggered, I'm not so easily overstimulated. I think for some people with anxiety, they tend to like retreat. I definitely retreat as well, but I'm also one of those people that like kind of get snippy. Like I'm going like this because I think of it like a snake. Like somebody says something that like triggers me and I just didn't have the barrier to like take a second. I just was like immediately like, I hate you, I never want to speak to you again, you're terrible. That has calmed down. I'm able to just be myself for the most part, and if I do get anxiety, which of course I do, everybody gets some form of anxiety, plus like I don't think mine will ever go completely away, but I'm able to like actually use these tools that I've been working on for so many years, like therapy and meditating, journaling, all of these things, they're actually doing something. It's like anxiety was like this 6-foot thick wall of cement between me and the outside world, because I thought that that was protecting me. And I feel like nothing could get through that. Like love couldn't get through that. Therapy couldn't get through that. And thankfully for me, medication did get through that. I've been able to like open myself up to so much more, and it's been really, really helpful for me. I get it if you're like anti-medication. We try not to take a lot of medications. My husband was totally anti-anxiety medication. He did not want me to go on it at all. In fact, the hospital situation for him was also very eye-opening. He was like, oh my gosh, there's my wife, even for a few minutes with this anxiety medication. I'm just telling you that if you have been thinking about trying it and you're afraid to, you don't want to, you feel like people are going to judge you, you feel like it doesn't work. I've seen anxiety medication in other people in my life not work for them. Again, this is just my personal opinion, but I think if it's something that you've been thinking about, it's worth trying. As long as you're working with like practitioners that you really believe in and care about. At some point I would love to get to the point where I'm not taking anxiety medication if I don't need to, and maybe there is a root cause, maybe it is mold, maybe it's who knows what else, that if I like am able to fix that health-wise, I won't have to take anxiety medication the rest of my life. I also felt like I was like less of a person, or like not strong enough, because I couldn't get rid of my anxiety on my own, and that's just silly. Sometimes you just need help, and I needed help, and I'm really grateful that I took that help and that it's been helping. I feel like this pregnancy has been entirely different than my pregnancy with Ivy mentally. I'm hoping my postpartum is similar. I just wanted to give you guys an update on the medication. Thank you to all of you who recommended and like really supported me when you could tell in my videos that things were not okay mentally for me. I really, really appreciate it. If any of you ever need somebody to talk to, my DMs are always open on Instagram. Send me a comment here, any of that stuff. I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for watching and hearing my story, and I'll see you in the next one.